Okay, before we get into this juicy episode, I want to share with you a holiday promo that's running for all of the month of December. I am offering $200 off my Awakening program. This is a 3-month individual coaching program where I will take you through an arc of an experience to help make sense of a mindfuck of a confusing relationship, process the feelings so that you can actually heal and become the best version of yourself so that you don't have to experience painful love ever again. This program includes an educational component with modules and videos and action-oriented homework. There's also some guided journeys, guided meditations in there for your benefit. It also includes individual sessions where we are really going to deeply process what has happened and give you that space to regulate your nervous system, to create that relationship with your inner child and really move some of this stuckness that you're feeling. And then you also get accountability support, real time. So when you get that message from your ex, who do you reach out to? Who can help you make that decision on what to say or what not to say? So having that real-time support to help you interrupt the reflex that you have been in. But most importantly, this is a container to hold you while you process what's happened and step into what's next. I really want you to feel safe and supported to say the thing that is too embarrassing and too shameful in your mind to say to your friends and family. Maybe you don't have anybody else that you can share these things with. And in the safety, you'll find healing. So again, this promo runs for all of December, $200 off this 3-month program. The first step is to schedule a free session so that we can get to know one another and see if this is going to be a good fit for you. And I want you to just imagine and envision this life where you feel so fulfilled and secure in yourself on your own, freeing you to then confidently choose a partner who can align with you in your life and celebrate the woman that you are, because you deserve that and it's so waiting for you. The link to the free session and to the Awakening program is in the show notes below, so be sure to check it out. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to this episode of Lucid Living with Bree. Learn to live and love awake. I am your host, Bree Wolta, and today I'm with one of my dearest friends and colleague, Adriana Ballantyne. Adriana is the owner and visionary of Wise Warrior Retreats. She's a licensed psychotherapist in private practice, and she's a facilitator and space holder for other ceremonial experiences and circles. Adriana, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is so fun.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this episode. And I've spoken briefly with my audience in different capacities about the side project that I work on with you and helping to co-create and co-facilitate the integration part of the plant medicine retreats that you have been holding and running for 4 years now. So this has a special place in my heart to share this other side of my passion, in addition to my passion of sitting with and helping women heal from toxic relationships. Plant medicine is like a whole nother big piece of my journey that helped me in my awakening process. So I love to share the message and help to answer some of the questions that people might be sitting with around plant medicine or the misconceptions. So thank you for being here and being willing to share your story and your passion for the work.
Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to share it with you.
Yeah. So let's jump into your story. And that's a big question, I know. But what was sort of the driver for you to find plant medicine? What were you going through that really felt like too much?
Sure. Yeah. So, my story in a nutshell is that I was on a long and complicated mystery path of mystery illness, essentially. And I went from living really quite full and energetic life, and what I now can sort of look back in the rear view mirror is, sort of burning the candle at both ends for much of my life into my early 30s. And as I sort of kindly refer to myself as a recovering type A person. I can sort of look back and see some of my patterning, but nonetheless, I was moving through the world quickly and doing a lot, engaged in a lot, and loving life. And over the course of a very short period of time, I woke up one morning and had lost some vision in one of my eyes. And over the course of that day, my vision actually went from minimal vision to completely blacked out. So it was almost like a shade that shut. And so, essentially, as one would do who had never had much, sort of health complication in their world, I reached out to my ophthalmologist, went in, and they said, actually, we need to sort of, you know, uh, more or less not rush you in, but act quickly and get you in some imaging of your brain to rule out what they called potential scary options.
Ooh.
And within a 24-hour period of going blind, I also received a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. And so that was the beginning of my journey. And, just sort of deer in the headlights, not necessarily being confronted with any health challenge. And then all of a sudden, really looking at this big path ahead and how this was going to impact my life. And not only that, but some of the different ideas I think that I had about MS and what I had heard in the past, although I know now that the diagnosis and treatment options have changed, it was really scary to look at the trajectory of what was happening in my body. And so, as one might do, I followed the recommendations of medical doctors and essentially, followed a path of treatment and looking at my different options. And while I was exploring different options, it became clear to me that there was a misdiagnosis there. And so, in that, I started to get curious and look at other options, look at other diagnoses, look at other treatment options, and really started to, like, at that point, I feel, um, adopt more of a holistic mindset, which I wasn't raised with and I didn't necessarily have prior, but I knew that there were some things to be understood from a different lens than the allopathic lens. So nonetheless, I can just say fast forward that I went through many years of treatment and different diagnostic, ideas of what was happening in my body, trying a lot of things, and all the while being psychologically impacted because as I, felt in my own body and as I can certainly see in others, there is no way to travel a path of chronic illness and not adopt PTSD along the way.
Mhm.
Because, well, waking up and going half blind over the course of one day is, you know, they say your life can change in any moment, and it certainly did and does.
Yeah.
And so, sort of, not only the shock of that, but the ways that my world got really small, and the ways that I had been suggested to avoid places and things and foods. And, again, I just, because my symptoms sort of started to progress in different ways, I was just not able to access as much of the things that I loved in life. And so life became pretty lonely in a lot of ways and really scary in a lot of other ways and hopeless in a lot of ways too. So I found myself sort of years down the pike looking at like what felt like kind of a nightmare, essentially, and really sort of having to realize that this was my life and that this was my path to figure out some answers. So, all of that to be said, I became curious about what on earth is happening and why is it happening, and is there something to be learned from this body experience? And that's when, as we call it, I got the call, right? The universe started to drop breadcrumbs, these sort of serendipitous things that would start happening that had me become curious about plant medicine. And that was sort of my entryway, if you will, to start understanding from a different lens, what is there to be learned, what is there to be healed, so that I could free my body and I could get back to the me that I was familiar with.
Yeah. I know we have shared in retreat spaces and in just private spaces a lot of conversation around the medicine of our experiences,
Mhm.
and when we can approach the the things that hurt or are hard or are um like inconceivable in the moment, when we can approach that with a like there's a larger picture here, there's a larger reason that this is happening,
Hmm.
that sometimes that can help us feel empowered to stay on the path to get through the thing.
Yes.
And be you talk about the PTSD just from going blind, but in the same day then being diagnosed
Hmm.
with an illness and then being on this whole different trajectory of your life is very disorienting and very traumatic.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to like grab hold of this reality that you're in? And did you find yourself in the beginning really fighting
Hmm.
what was, since you had come from such a healthy body experience?
So much so. I think any discomfort in our body, our sort of innate way of being or responding to it is to like, okay, how do I rid myself of this? How do I at least cover what's happening in my system? How do I, repress, which, now I understand differently, what it is that's going on. Because certainly I was fighting for my life back. And so, um, what I now understand is messaging. When my body was uncomfortable, it was sort of like, what's the closest, quickest, easiest thing to get my body to stop doing this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. The quick fix, as we
Yeah.
as we say, right? What is, instead of expanding our ability and our tolerance to sit in what is present and what is discomfort and what is true, it's like, how do I distract, or how do I fix, or how do I otherwise make it go away?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, all the while sitting with yourself in this, right? So it's mentioning that my world got really small, and, some friends got it, family got, to what extent people can get it if they sort of haven't traveled a path of suffering in this way.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I found myself sort of being invited to things that I used to be able to do. It's like, oh, I could go do the thing and adapt. But it's not what I wanted to do. It's like what I wanted and needed to do was be in bed, but I was missing out on life. And again, that became really dark and scary and sad. Um, just
Yeah.
incredibly painful. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially living the first third of your life in a very outward manner, and not maybe spending a lot of time in the quiet and the stillness with yourself,
That's
to
right.
come to like the screeching halt
Yes.
in and of
Exactly.
itself is also traumatic.
Yeah, so much so. And there's so much psychosomatic relevance to this journey, but our minds sort of take hold, and with good intention, to be protective, but nonetheless, every little thing you would eat or do, and then you'd not feel well, and gosh, you'd start to obsess about, was that the thing that, you become this detective, but a neurotic detective nonetheless. And it oftentimes, even though you're getting curious and you're trying to figure out answers, that becomes a pattern that's incredibly unhelpful, really trying to control every aspect of your life.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Was there a moment that you remember more clearly than others of almost settling into your body having this wisdom that you were like along the ride with, instead of trying to fight against?
To be honest, I think it took several years, at the very least, of, just again trying to fix and see specialists. And, it was sort of it was a problem that was, something was broken that needed fixing. And so my whole mission was to fix it. And I've historically and still am a very determined human being. And so I was sort of like, head down, figure it out, do the research, see the people, follow the protocol. And I'm can find myself being very rigid so I can follow, I'm a good student of whatever it may be. So, I was restricted with certain foods. It's like I would never cheat, things like this.
Mhm.
So, with obviously, I would say like I would eat um, bird seed if it meant I was better. I was like, I don't care about food, it's just I
Yeah.
wanted my life back.
Yeah.
And so I think it probably honestly wasn't until I started to access other holistic approaches, understand the impact of energy, and start to study shamanic practice really, and start to understand that like there was meaning to be made out of this. And again, that took a very long time. And I think in so many ways, even bring it to current day, there's parts of me that wants to still sort of battle with the body and the journey, because I sometimes want a different reality. And
Yeah.
so sort of the path of radical acceptance wasn't necessarily one that was easy to adopt. And to sort of look at this and say, like, wow, what's the beauty, what's the messaging, what's the gifts in health challenge. It took me a very long time to get to that point, that it was actually here in service of my evolution. And I would have not been able to say that to you year one, two, three, or four, probably at least.
Yeah. Radical acceptance is close to impossible in many situations where even you're out of the the activating situation.
That's
So
right.
to be still in the health journey at that point and have to really just surrender into that is, I can imagine, incredibly challenging.
Hmm.
And you mentioned the call, feeling the call to plant medicine, and this is a term at least I'm not aware of outside of ayahuasca.
Hmm.
Are you aware if that term is used of like feeling this intuitive pull?
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly what you said is, we our intuition can sort of light up when we're feeling drawn to something, and sometimes we don't know exactly what, why or what, or whatever it may be. But oftentimes, yeah, like you're saying, this terminology around feeling the call, most of the time, I it sort of refers to the space of the plants starting to sort of commune with you and have interaction with you. And oftentimes people will say, upon signing up to join a circle or something like this, like, oh, the medicine's already working with me. And
Mhm.
I think that it actually even, the conversations start even before that.
Yeah.
So I knew, again, that call is sort of this intuitive knowing of, like, there's something greater, there's something curious, there's something I'm terrified about, but there's something that's almost like a magnet sort of drawing me towards it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel if they are feeling the call, almost the secondary reaction is like, I can't do that. It's too scary.
Hmm.
And specifically with ayahuasca, you know, it's the grandmother medicine that has this reputation of like the no bullshit jumping in the deep end.
Hmm.
And talk a little bit about how you held both of those things to be true and what helped you make the decision to say yes to this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that for a period of time, it was sort of holding that dialectic, right? Like the, oh my God, I'm terrified of this, what I've heard about it, what I've read about it, what I've seen in documentaries. Like, what am I going to see? What am I going to experience? What's going to get uncovered? And then the other part of me that's like, well, shit, like, life is not feeling good. And this is not the life I want to be living. And, um, just really sick of being sick, and also being on what I call sort of the hope roller coaster. It's like
Mhm.
you have a new protocol and you have something that really makes sense to you, and you're like, all right, you sort of like gather up all your energetic belongings, and you're like, I'm all right, I'm doing it, and have everybody in your support network, like really on board with you. But then it's vulnerable to hope. And so I just been on that and sort of felt the despair and the disappointment so many times that I was just like, shit, like, I guess I'm all in. And what's sort of the worst thing that could happen? Of course, being scared of just what my body's response was a part of it, and if I had the energy to do this work.
Mhm.
But otherwise, I just said, like, again, it was just compelling to keep saying yes, and I kept thinking about it and feeling about it, and it just the signs kept showing up, and it just was like, it just kept saying, like, okay, it's
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and it was a big deal because, again, my life got really small, and my life was kind of ruled by fatigue, and all of the ways that I was sort of at the mercy of what my body was up for in a given day. So I certainly wasn't traveling. I mean, I was barely going out with friends, I wasn't traveling, and here I was looking at this trip solo going abroad. But I was sort of like, you have nothing to lose, like,
Mhm.
pack your bags, let's figure this out.
A little bit of that fuck it energy
Totally. Hmm.
and feeling that expansive scariness. Like it's feeling like it's something that's unknown and you don't have control over. And so the biggest part of medicine work is surrendering to what is.
It sure.
And like what a beautiful parallel to your life, right? It's like
Mhm.
how can you surrender to grandmother in ceremony as a practice to surrendering every day in your life?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly, if I were to highlight some of the biggest gems that I've received and the gifts that I've received from that medicine, that felt sense of what it's like to surrender in the moment and noticing. And I always refer to it this way, it doesn't matter how many times I sit, but when I sit, oftentimes I do this thing where I call it's wrestling the bear, and that's me. I'm the bear. And I sort of, I fight with the medicine. I'm like, here, I welcomed you in to teach me all of the wisdom, and then the wisdom starts coming in, and I'm like, nope, it's my agenda. This is what I'm trying to get from the ceremony. And so it's such a just a potent lesson about like how does that actually, you know apply in my body and in my day to day when I'm like, well, I'm uncomfortable today, and it's like, what are all the things that I do to disregard and abandon myself, versus say like, well, I got to cancel a few things and today's an in bed kind of day.
Yeah.
And I certainly credit the medicine for my exponential growth in that space.
I think surrender is for so many people, myself included, it's like, what does that even mean? I think sometimes we and myself, and again, myself included in ceremony work, like go to the circle with the intention of, I want to work on this and I'm
Mhm.
going to surrender to this
Mhm.
intention. And then you take your medicine and you lie down and then you're presented with something else and you're like, no, my
I wasn't concerned
intention,
with that.
yeah, my intention was not this. And why aren't I getting this? Right? The exact opposite of
Mhm.
surrendering. But I
Mhm.
think, at least for me, I would convince myself that I'm surrendering
Mhm.
because I'm like, here's my intention. I'm handing it over. But in the moment when the medicine starts moving in you and you feel it and it's not what you want to be feeling, it's like almost that visceral resistance and like, no, I wasn't prepared for this. I'm not in control of this. And then the fight and the push and like like
Uh-huh.
feeling what it is to actually surrender.
Mhm.
And I remember in Costa Rica, uh, not last year, a couple years ago. I don't. Every year I have weird somatic things that happen, but there was one year in particular where I was in the ceremony space for hours after a ceremony ended
Uh-huh.
and could not stop moving my arm and my leg. Like it was just convulsing and twitching and contorting and like something was trying to move.
Right.
And it wasn't until like towards the end of ceremony, I remember like specifically the moment where I'm like, well, I guess my arm's just going to keep doing this for like 7 more hours. Like, I guess this is what it is. And that for me was like the tangible moment of surrender.
Uh-huh.
And so calling on that memory in the day-to-day life situations where I'm like, no, surrendering is where you're just like, there's a bigger picture. This is happening for a reason. And you relax into into it instead of like smacking up against it.
Yeah. 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 It's some of the most challenging work, and I will say that in ceremony spaces, when I agree to soften and I step into that space, that what I have experienced is incredibly beautiful as a result. It's like almost, and I say this lightly and I say this with all the compassion, but it's like we could sort of waste our time in these spaces, fighting with the medicine about who's in charge, or we can remember that we invited the medicine and we agreed to this. I think so much of the time, many of us say like, oh, there's some point in the ceremony where like, whose idea was this? It's like we're moving through discomfort. It's like, why did I sign up for this? And then we can understand more deeply. It's like because we came for this elevated level of consciousness that we can't access in our day to day. And the importance of being able to be in that space, because what's happening in our day to day, like I was sharing on my journey, it's sort of like you're opening all the different doors and you're thinking about the things in the same exact way. And it's sort of like, how do we sort of access something more elevated, something different that opens doors to so much potential and possibility when we're willing to say like, okay, yes, I'm scared, but I'm going to look at that thing.
Yeah.
There's great reward, I found.
Which is giving up control of our reality, right? Because we only have so much control based on our past experiences and our current experience, and like we don't
Hmm.
have the wisdom and the openness to pull in anything new if we're stuck in the familiar.
That's right.
But that involves trusting something bigger than ourselves and letting go of the control, which is like the number one fear of
Yes.
most people, I would say, that sit with medicine. They're like,
Hmm.
I don't know what I'm gonna be shown. It's like,
Right.
yeah, I know. There's
Right.
no way that you could know. There's no way that you could prepare to receive exactly what you're
Mhm.
gonna get.
Yes.
And like when people ask me, what is your tip for doing plant medicine? I'm like, you have to just receive whatever is given to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so very true. Yeah. It's, you know, I always say this too. It's like we couldn't make it up if we tried. And that's why it's sort of, categorically in this space of like mystical experience, because it is, it's believing in, sort of tending to, and trusting that there is something greater that has our best interest at heart. And I think that's a big piece of the medicine work too. We oftentimes say grandmother won't give us anything that we can't handle. Doesn't mean that it's not hard, and it doesn't mean that, it's not so incredibly important, which it is, to tend to the integration process, but to really trust that we will only see, feel, and experience things that we are capable of moving through is, to me, that offers comfort, and that offers sort of nervous system regulation in stepping into something that is brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just having a connection in general to make you feel less alone. I know for me in my very first experience, like feeling something that I wasn't in control of
Hmm.
was both terrifying, and I'm like, whoa, maybe I'm not responsible for everything. And it
Uh-huh.
was it was almost like a relief that I
Yeah.
had an ally of some kind that was working with me, through me, for me. And that feeling of not having to bear it all by
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah.
everything on your shoulders,
Yeah.
like whether you're moving through an illness that's like really isolated you into a narrow experience, or
Hmm.
even like post COVID, right? A lot of people are still feeling alone and isolated and hopeless in ways that, while we were in COVID, was like acceptable, quote unquote.
Sure.
But now, because the outside world is more back to normal, it's like, I think a lot of people are getting the messaging that that's not okay to still feel lonely.
Yeah.
And so being able to sit with the plants and the spirit, the universe, whatever your higher power
Hmm.
is like so nurturing to be held by something.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I remember, the retreat that we held during COVID, and the ways in which people were holding things in their bodies, and the ways in which people had become, isolative, and just there's so many things that were happening that became our new normal that we didn't realize. And when people, took all the precautions and, you know, quarantined and got there and tested and did everything, and then like could like rip off their masks and like hug another human and dance with another human and
Yeah.
sit in the symphony of circle amongst other humans. I think there was something that people, I don't know, I want to say that they convinced themselves that we didn't necessarily need, but we forgot how much we needed each other, and how, just powerful and medicinal it was in itself to just be with other humans in shared space and shared healing space with conscious connection. I think that that's just another incredible counterpart to this work,
Yeah.
is what it means to hold each other in the vulnerability of what is.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
being able to be in spaces, if you're a male or a female, and being
Mm-hmm.
able to see other males and females
Mm-hmm.
show up genuinely and vulnerably and authentically, it's like this type of work attracts people, for the most part, that are there for the right intention,
Yeah.
and who almost immediately create that safe place to be vulnerable because they're being vulnerable. And in a lot of our day-to-day lives, maybe we have a couple of friends that we can be real with,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we should be more in touch with those friends. It's like
Yeah.
our monthly phone call or whatever is not quite enough to make us feel seen and connected.
Yeah.
So going into a week long in our retreats, going into a week long of connection
Yep.
with humans, with spirit, with plants, with yourself, like it's
Mm.
it's transformative.
Yeah. Yeah. It is indeed. And the remembering of all of this, what matters to us, what it means to be most deeply connected to ourselves and authentically connected to others, like, sort of uninhibited, just in this way that we get to be,
Mhm.
you know,
And be
is
with
not.
ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know before we started recording, we talked a little bit about how the medicine helps you shift maybe away from fighting yourself into
Mm-hmm.
more of like, oh, I'm my own ally. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good company when I sit
Uh-huh.
down and like allow myself to be
Uh-huh.
in good company.
Right.
How did that shift feel for you on your journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the things that I experienced most powerfully. And I can see as, we sit alongside with other humans doing this work, that that is one of the most magnificent gifts, I would say, is, this word or these cluster of words, get thrown around a lot. And that is, self-love. What does it mean to sort of honor, respect, acknowledge, be in our own company with comfort and, um, but what I've really experienced in my own journey, and again seen with other people, is what it's like to tend to ourselves. So we're in discomfort and it's like, do we try and run from that? Do we try and judge that? Do we try and be like, gosh, I don't want to be in my own space or my own company? Or in the medicine work and the felt sense of like being in your own personal laboratory, it's sort of like, okay, I'm uncomfortable right now. We'll just sort of name that in this space. How am I going to have my own back in this space? Instead of, again, the conversation we're having around like controlling, fighting, like surrender is actually a gift to ourselves, and it's a freedom, and it's sort of like unclenching the white knuckles and really sort of stepping into like, okay, really trusting that I've got this, and trusting that I can support myself, and actually trusting that I can be my own best friend, because shit, I know myself better than anyone else, and like I know what I'm up to and I know what I like, but I also can get in spaces where I am not on my own team. And so there is this opportunity in these, in these medicine moments to either abandon self or really deeply show up for you. And I think the latter obviously is a whole new frame of mind and a new way of being. And I think about this both in the ways that I've experienced in my medicine work and in the ways that I've seen others, access the same. And certainly in the work that I do, in my clinical practice, it's like if we can actually, in whatever it is that we're going through, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, loss, transition, like if we can be to selves, like, okay, I got you. And like we almost have like a best friend to be traveling throughout the world and throughout our experiences with, like, we're one, not so lonely, and two, like we're not sort of swimming upstream because we're not necessarily negotiating and navigating like all of the internal turmoil that can be, self criticism and judgment and all of the ways that we can create blockages for ourselves. And one of the things that I really realized on my journey was the ways I was standing in my own way, and the ways that, perfectionism and control and all of the things that kind of kept my life tight and organized in the past actually weren't applicable to this journey. It wasn't sort of like this one size fits all. And to be in discomfort and be like, oh man, that really sucks, like what do you need, I got you, the same way that I would do to a good friend, rather than you're uncomfortable, well shit, we have stuff to do, so you better get dressed, like, is a
Yeah.
totally different framework. And to feel for myself is a, just such a different um avenue and such a different lens than an old way of being. And I think the medicine has again showed me in these moments, like, okay, when I clench and I grip around things, things are really uncomfortable. But if I'm like, all right, let me just take one finger off the wheel, and the medicine's like, it's safe, take two off, and we sort of start
Yeah,
to play in that playground, it's like, oh yeah, I actually am safe. I actually am okay. And my, sort of my own just regulatory system and ways in which I can ground can be so different if I'm on my side.
totally.
you
And
know
we get stuck in these loops that we
Mhm.
don't even realize we're in, right? Of the perfectionism or the criticism or the judgment.
Yeah.
And the image that I love for myself and for my clients is, if you had a real child who
Mhm.
was upset, say this child is having a tantrum in the corner, a little toddler that's just like losing his shit.
Mhm.
If you try to ignore him or tell him to shut up or tell him to go, we have to leave, go put your clothes on, it's just gonna like elevate
That's right.
his dysregulation. He's not gonna
Mhm.
feel comforted or secure or nurtured, right? And in so many ways, when we have that part of us come in, that's like, no, I need to control this because I'm really afraid, and we're like, shut up. Like,
Right.
we don't try to get curious around that part and be like, come
So
here,
true.
let me hold you. I know
Mhm.
you're afraid, I know you're upset. What do you need? We're safe.
Mhm.
And that reparenting, the retending.
Yeah.
And when I put that in terms for my clients of like the actual child, they're like, oh yeah, of course I would tend to the child. And I'm
Yes.
like, but you
Well.
have so many little wounded children, little wounded parts of you that when they get triggered, they
Yep.
come to the forefront and are like needing our
Mhm.
attention and our space and our love.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's a new orientation for so many of us, and as this medicine work both teaches us and then actually sort of supports our pathways real time, it is us recreating new patterning, and it's recreating new patterning by practice and behavior. But it also, this medicine work really works with the plasticity of our brains and our being. And so in the moment, let's say in a medicine ceremony, when you're noticing you're really uncomfortable, and you remember that one of the ways in which you can tend to this is that you can either hold yourself, or you can rock, or you can sing along to the music, or whatever it is, the brain starts to say, oh, when I'm in rough shape, or, I can notice this in the body, or I'm scared or whatever, like I can actually meet myself there. And then all of a sudden there's this new pathway that just like, brilliantly lights up. And it's like, oh, this is accessible. And the things that we both rewire and retrain in a medicine space can also be the pin that we drop to come back to. So much of our integration work gets to be like, remember how alive that was, and we can actually feel a felt sense, like in our cellular being, like what it was like in this profound moment of ceremony. And those are all of the nuggets that we get to keep, and we get to put them in our sort of like energetic savings bank to say, like, okay, when I'm afraid, I get to access that thing. I was terrified in ceremony, or I felt so sick, or whatever it was, and then I remembered to sit up and sing. And it's just all of the ways in which our system gets to sort of take this big exhale and say, like, okay, I can drop in. I did it then, and I can do it now, kind of thing. We're sort of pulling upon these new experiences that we can access.
Yeah, and it's similar to embodiment work or experiential work where you're learning by doing as opposed to, thinking about how it would feel to be in that situation to choose to sit up and sing instead of lie down in agony,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yes.
we create not only a new neural pathway, but it's like more palpable and
Mm-hmm.
accessible when we've experienced it ourselves because we can recall on the memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are, feeling stuck in talk therapy, it
Mm-hmm.
might be because you're stuck in the analytical part of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And you might understand, this was my case too. I understood why A plus B equaled C in my history, right? I was
Right.
like, this trauma equals this trauma, that checks out. Okay.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, I'm doing the work because I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that's part of the work. We
Mm-hmm.
have to have the awareness,
Mm-hmm.
but then we also have to integrate the experience and feel whatever is stuck in our body.
Yeah.
So for people who are feeling a little bit like, I've been in therapy, it's not working, you're looking for something that can help actually shift behavior by putting you in the new experience. Plant medicine is a really, really good tool for that. But it's only as good as you allow it to be, I
Mm.
guess, like especially with the integration piece, which is something that I believe so deeply in and love that Wise Warrior is so committed to, because
Mm.
we can go to Costa Rica for a week and have 3 plant medicine ceremonies and have it be a wonderful experience.
Mhm.
But the actualized change happens when we come back on
Mm.
Monday morning, right?
Yeah.
As Raven says, and is like, ceremony starts when we return home. And how do we bring all the stuff that we learned back into our life?
Yeah.
That's the work.
That's the,
That's
yeah.
that's the part that doesn't feel as outwardly scary as like going and sitting in the ceremony. But
Mhm.
it's like, when rubber meets the road, how are you going to choose different?
Right. Right. Yeah. It is. And I think, and again, you and I talk about this often, just that integration process really it actualizes change. So it's sort of like we get to receive the wisdom, we get to, be in this space where profound things come into our awareness. But again, it's not until we go home and we have the hard conversations or we make the different changes or whatever it is that we're actually saying yes to ourselves. And that's a continuation of what, I was speaking to in terms of, you know, almost sort of the next escalated level of like meeting ourselves, not abandoning ourselves, and saying, I said yes to this, and I actually said yes to this whole package, to this whole transformation. And
Yeah.
so it's not just sort of being in the beauty of the experience and the receptivity of that, but it really is, okay, how do I actually get to take what I learned about having my own back and apply that to the courage that, is then sort of proceeding, like, what's the follow up and follow through. And I think this is one of the, many reasons that coming together in community this way is so powerful, because we are held amongst community, and everybody is sort of doing their own work within, whatever they came for and whatever it means to sort of follow up on ceremonial work. But we're holding each other accountable, and we're holding each other in the vulnerability of what it means to change. And having other like-minded, humans around the globe that you can sort of call upon, that are now, you know sort of your siblings and your family, and in all of the way that we come together, to really say, like, good on you for doing whatever the hard work is in your world, because I'm going home to do the same.
Mhm.
And we really get to hold each other up and see each other in these powerful shifts that we're calling upon, to be the best humans for ourselves and for our people, and to really actually, we all, of course, talk about this too, to make the impact and the ripple effect that we see this work having on individuals and families and communities and globally, as people really come into shedding their shit, so that we're not projecting it on one another, and we're
Yeah.
showing up as humans with integrity in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, finding your soul family that understands and shares the same value of self-growth and shifting generational trauma and showing up and taking responsibility for,
That's right.
you know, what you're giving to everyone around you.
Yep.
And one of the most powerful things about Wise Warrior is the continued integration for several months after the retreat. So it's not just, saying that you're going to text with the friend that you made at the retreat and then being good about it for a couple of weeks and then things falling off. This is like, no, we're showing up on Zoom every month
Mm-hmm.
to connect and to integrate and to drop back into the power of the community and the medicine and the learnings and the wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and like sharing, how are you doing? How are you doing going back home?
Yeah.
Because I know that that integration piece is missing in a lot of medicine spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And even on site at the retreat, like having the integration circles after each ceremony the next morning, where you're able to hear everybody's experience, obviously the abridged version,
Mhm.
but and then like helping that make sense of what your experience was and sharing into the space what is true for you and just making sense of it real time and then also making sense of it longer term as we go through the several months of integrating back into real life where we
Mhm.
tend to forget pretty quick what we what we learned on our retreat when we're all relaxed and open and receptive and then we come home and we're like shoop I need to control and do everything again myself.
Uh-huh. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a continuation, and we've talked about this too, and a holding of the ways that we're woven in community. And I know we've talked about this, post our first retreat, how we were like, okay, we're sort of setting the space, and we're intentionally curating this experience and all of the complementary practices that support it, and just all of the pieces and parts. But what we didn't realize is that we were actually planting roots and creating community, and how much one another, and the continuation of our relationships is so crucial, not just to this work, but to our human connection and to our livelihood and to what it means to feel alive and soul connected. And so I think that that has just been such a honor to be able to sort of, you know, create the space, and then know that the folks who are, really drawn to this work and who are supposed to be there get to be there, but that they also are all, again, there's all these beautiful synchronicities of the ways in which whatever cohort comes together and why we get to be medicine for each other. And that, again, is just a new frame of mind that we all get to see, is like there truly is medicine in everything. And so even the people that piss you off, they are medicine, because they're an opportunity to look at the why and the who, and whatever it is that is sort of triggering within. And
yeah,
so I think that there's just so much magic when we're open to looking at it from that frame and
yeah.
that sort of way of thinking.
Yeah, and taking in the case of a Wise Warrior retreat, we hold them in Costa Rica in this beautiful facility called Imaloa, and we recognize how much effort it takes for you to make yourself go from your home to another country, like especially if you have kids, if you have a job, like whatever you are coordinating to get yourself from there to Imaloa. And when you make that space, like you're already showing yourself via action that you matter, your healing matters, this retreat matters. And so like carving out that time for yourself is the opening of this work for yourself. And then being on site with these people, like you're saying, the medicine that comes from all of the community that's there, it's like the healing that comes in the side conversation at breakfast
Mm-hmm.
or in the integration after our one of our dance circles. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are so many opportunities to receive medicine and make connection outside of just the plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
ceremonies. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that is such an important piece of healing when we can really unplug and put ourselves in a new environment with new culture and new food and new people and like
Mm-hmm.
open new pathways of our brain outside of our like this is the same route I drive to take my kids to school and this is the same thing I make for dinner every third Wednesday. Like it's just we need
So
to shake it up a little bit.
yes. Yeah. It's so true. And, I had spoken to this earlier in terms of the way that the medicine starts working with you. But, one of the things that you had mentioned is all that it takes. And it's one of the things, again, that we meant, like the second we sit down in welcoming ceremony, it's like, oh my God, we all did it. Like everyone remembered their passport. And like, we did all the things that it meant to sit in this seat right here and now. And let's take a breath, And so we get to begin that way. But I had even spoken to somebody who was considering retreat most recently, and sort of noticing even the confronting thoughts and the narratives that pop up upon even considering, like, oh, there's no way that that would be financially feasible, there's no way that my family could organize themselves, there's no way that I could be away from kiddos. And and instead of what I hear And Bree, we've probably talked to so many people sort of in this space of like, it's not the right time. I think many people say that. It's like
Yeah.
the call is there, but it's not the right time. And it's like, what does not the right time mean? And,
Yeah.
obviously incredibly honoring, everybody's life circumstance. And if it's truly not, it's truly not. But I also encourage people to listen more deeply to is not the right time actually the best time in the ways we might interpret it in sort of an older way of thinking. And when it's sort of like, oh, there's too much going on in my world or whatever it may be, it's like, one, is that a perpetual cycle for many of us? Because I could always say I never have enough time for fill in the blank, because that's just damn true.
Yeah.
um, but in the same way, it's like, okay, and is this actually the most perfect time, because it helps me reevaluate what matters, and it helps me sort of confront the parts of me that say this isn't possible, or how could I actually deserve a trip like this, or all of the different ways that our mind can go to these spaces where we can prevent, or we can create roadblocks for ourselves. And so I just encourage people to sit with that too. It's like sometimes we say that and there's all these narratives as to why. And the other part too is that the ego gets a little bit afraid of, like, what it's going to be like to be in these spaces. So the parts of us that get fearful start to put up walls, and we can sort of find all of the reasoning why it's not going to work. And again, I say this with love and support and understanding and grace, because I get it, and I get that life is full and busy. And I get that, oftentimes we get to that point where I was at, which is like all of these things, I could be like, yeah, it's like not safe for me to get on a plane right now. I don't feel well enough. And then I could also say, but there's no time but now. And so I think that there's just a framework that we get to sort of like shift, like, okay, if I look at it from this lens,
Mhm.
um, how is actually what I consider my messy life actually a perfect place to just step in and like shake it all up.
Yeah.
So.
And in that act of you saying, this is really important to me,
Hmm.
allowing the loved ones in your life to help, right? Help with the childcare, help with some of the financial commitment, help with taking care of your plants or your animals at home. Like,
Right.
and I think so often we are equally afraid to ask for help as we are to let go of control in this ceremony, because they're the same thing. And
Uh-huh.
so, like, yes, to your point, there might be a valid reason that the time is not right. But for you, just taking that moment of inquiry with yourself of like,
Right.
okay, am I saying that I can't afford this because I actually don't have the money? Or is it because I don't believe that I can pay this for myself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or do I actually not have childcare? Or do I actually just not want to ask my husband to step in for a week?
Mm-hmm.
Or my mom, or whatever. It's like, in what ways are we already confirming our narrative that
Yes.
we don't deserve it
Right.
by creating experiences where is creating the experience that's reaffirming that we don't deserve it.
Right. 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 Yeah. And, of course, as we've been talking about a lot, newness is intimidating. And so, I think that, again, if we think of sort of the top 5 or 10 things that show up for people, asking for help is probably, somewhere that woven in there for many of us. And so it's sort of like, how do we get to step into ceremony before stepping into ceremony? And open ourselves to vulnerability that we can't and aren't meant to or aren't made for doing this alone, any of
Yeah.
this being human life. And so I think that gets to be really a huge part of it, and watching what we think is actually not possible become possible. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that person that I've just said, like, oh, they could never do it, and then we ask somebody and, oh, wow, something opens up.
Yeah.
And instantly we're not alone in making something happen that we feel really drawn to explore.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I have such like a soft place in my heart for whether it's in my clients that I work with individually or in the guests at the retreat, when
Hmm.
I see somebody who holds space, whether they're a therapist or a doctor or a nurse or some other space holder who
Hmm.
does it for their profession, probably because they've practiced through childhood,
Hmm.
come to a circle and say, I'm not holding space. I need space held for me. It's like, fuck yeah.
Yes.
And watching them take up that space is so healing.
Yes.
It's so healing because again, shifting out of that pattern, that narrative of, this is what I do. I show up for other people, but people don't show up for me.
Yeah.
And allowing yourself to feel what it is to be shown up for.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. One of the, the one of the most potent lessons that the medicine teaches us that we, graciously receive from the teachings that come along with this medicine is about reciprocity. And, the ways in which actually we get to be given in give and take, both in our receptivity with one another, with humans, but also with the planet. And, what it means to sort of be in that space where it's, it's a bit more balanced than some of us live. Some of us really are in those spaces where we give, and we almost see that as, our purpose or our way of sort of earning our enoughness or whatever it may be. But what it is like, to hold space for space holders, which there are so many of, parents and people in
Mhm.
so many different capacities, teachers. There's just so many of us that show up for others unconditionally and tirelessly. And so to be in a space where people are sort of willing vulnerably to say, like, all right, I'm sort of hanging my coat up and I'm hanging here. And what it means to settle into that space of being taken care of, and the magic that comes from that just is such a deep honor for us. I know, to be in that give and take, and for us to really hold that space, for everyone that comes.
Yeah. We as the staff receive so much from these retreats. Like I won't even be able to name all the things. And we would need a whole nother podcast just for that. But like watching people choose themselves, I think is one of my favorite things of the retreat. Do you have like
Mm.
a favorite thing about these retreats for you?
Oh my gosh, everything. Um, there's so many things, but I can sort of, where my heart and head just goes instantly when you say that, is witnessing people sort of walk on site and be welcomed in the ways that our energy is just like so stoked. We've put everything in place, we've planted all the seeds, the container is set, and we're just so ready to welcome people in. And when people sort of sit down and interact with each other in a welcoming ceremony and introduce themselves to each other and really speak their truth of why they're there and what called them to be there and what it took for them to get there, and all of this, and to almost sort of like just to be in the anticipatory excitement and magic, and like, oh my gosh, what's this week gonna look like, what are individuals gonna receive, and what's gonna be the organic unfolding of like this particular cohort, and so it really is that it's sort of like landing together, grounding in together, and like sort of like metaphorically sort of like all holding hands and saying like we're ready, and sort of jumping into to this work, holding one another in that, and just feeling the weaving of the souls in this space just is like, that just feels like pure magic to me, and I can
Mhm.
feel excited thinking about it.
That it's divine orchestration
Totally.
completely. Like we couldn't cherry pick a
That's right.
more perfect cohort every time. And there's a crazy, I don't know, phenomenon or something that happens where people leave and they look different. And similar to, the women that I work with that are getting out of toxic relationships, they'll often say like, I feel like my light's back. Or people will comment and say, "Oh, you look brighter, you look different." And it's like that reclaiming of energy,
Mm-hmm.
which is happening on these retreats. Like
So
I,
much so.
we need to incorporate the before and after photos
Yeah.
somehow this year because it's so profound to watch people come in feeling a little bit probably depleted and anticipatory and afraid or wherever they are energetically, and by the last day, and they've gone through 3 plant medicine ceremonies and all of the different workshops and embodiment experiences that we we offer to weave in the teachings,
Mhm.
it's like they're a different they're a different vibe. They're a different version of themselves.
Exactly that. It is.
Exactly.
It's so incredibly true. And I know we've done this in the past in terms of, um, taking photos of people in the Flower Olympia ceremony, and and a lot of people, as we sent them along with folks, put them on their altar at home, because it was sort of like, how do I access that version of me? And
Mhm.
again, I talk about sort of dropping that pin into moments in ceremony or moments throughout the week, and how do we actually get to access the felt sense of that version of ourself, to keep the medicine and the magic alive. And you're right. I mean, I think, again, in some of the most spectacular memories, I remember year one, and watching, and the hugging and tears and laughter, as sort of we said goodbye and sent people along their travels at the end of the retreat. We were just like, we were blown away by the fact that, like, literally the light turned on, and people were really, just, again, it was like you said, it was like palpable to just to see and feel. And I know that in my own world. And when, in my first experience, my husband will always refer to it this way. Ryan will always say, like, um when I got off the plane and he came to get me, he was like, he couldn't, but like, he was like, you looked so incredibly different. And again, it's hard to put words to that, but it's that version of your light turning back on. And it almost feels like emotional to share. It's like
Yeah.
that's possible. um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think we put enough importance or understanding around our energy and like, recharging our vessels and ourselves and our mind and our body and our spirit and all these things the same way we have to charge our phone every night.
Yes.
We run ourselves into the ground. We burn the candle at both ends. We bend over backwards for everybody. We just don't take importance like we should on how we are showing up in the world. So when you go somewhere else and like replug,
Yep.
of course you're going to look different coming back. Like,
Charged.
yeah. Yeah. What,
Uh-huh.
in terms of this retreat coming up in
Yep.
February, what
Yeah.
do you want people to know about this retreat?
Mm. That it is a curation coming from so much love on the back end, as we think about and continue to learn from previous experiences of, what is the most potent, and what, ways in which the collaborating, like you said, sort of the workshops and all of these different things support the medicine work. And that while it's beautiful to sit in, two ceremonies or three ceremonies over the course of a weekend, that being able to be in an arc of experience where we've crafted and, really understood most deeply through, lived experience of these retreats, what it's like to put all of the different things together, and these specific things together, to offer people a toolkit of working with the medicine, to offer people a toolkit of how to integrate, how to, work somatically in the body. And then there's all these ways in which, there's just such beautiful complementary practice and experience that gets to be a part of this. So, through dance movement, for instance, that we get to sort of shed and release maybe the things that came up in ceremony the night before, through the plant, the plant based, just beautiful cuisine that's there. It's like about nourishing and strengthening our bodies, and, allowing the food to be medicine. And, the campus and the incredible staff and all of the locals that are there to really hold and create space for us, that they are medicine to us, and that they, we have a lot to learn, I think, from Costa Rican culture in terms of, reciprocity and simplicity and kindness, and, the ways in which, um, Costa Rican culture, really draws us back again and again to this space. It's our home away from home for a reason. And, I think just the magic of the jungle, and the space there is just such an incredible container for, what is so profound in this work. And I know we've felt this so many times. It's like the jungle and the animals in it are dancing and supporting us as we're sort of moving through our transformation, because, the communion and the connection with the planet is such a huge part of this, and reminding us of our roots. So, the retreat, as we both have spoken to, is so near and dear to our hearts, and we just so believe in the the potent and magical potential of this work. And we also, we call it work, but it's also to acknowledge that there is so much celebration and play as part of our experience, because we're celebrating being human, and the vast sort of gamut of what it's like to grieve and celebrate at the same time, and that we are so incredibly capable of doing all of this. And so, our container and our space and our retreat is just so open to all of that. And we're here for it. And we are just so excited and honored to hold this space and to have the opportunity to work with these plants, and to have the opportunity to work with such incredible medicine keepers who have worked, directly with these lineages for decades to receive the wisdom that they have so graciously passed down to us. And we don't take that lightly. And we are just so grateful for the ways that we get to up level ourselves and each other. And we just get psyched for anybody that is feeling the call and wants to reach out to us. We are always open to connection, answering questions, doing whatever we can to sort of offer the knowns amongst the unknowns, that we can provide people, so they really feel safe coming into the space.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, if anyone listening wants to reach out to myself or Adriana, I'll put the links in the show notes so they have access to everything. But
Yes.
it's important to us that you feel safe and that you feel held and important coming into this work.
Mm.
So we care about you and your experience and who you are as a person, and want to help bridge that fear gap a little bit as best we can.
Mm.
So the first step is to complete an application so that we can be absolutely sure that this is the safe next step for you, um, and get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. To that point, Brie, I was just going to speak to the application process, and just, how we really take seriously. I mean, the utmost important to us is your safety and the safety of the group. So there are certain medications that are counterindicated with this work, and there are also, certain experiences from a mental health standpoint in terms of particular diagnoses that it's not recommended. And so certainly we can chat with people in those spaces and sort of meet those inquiries, and just to know that, again, while this work is so powerful for so many, that it's not appropriate for all. And it's an incredible toolkit amongst many in our sort of holistic toolbox, that we feel honored and just really excited to be able to offer.
Yeah. And if you're in the information gathering stage, if you follow Wise Warrior Retreats on Instagram, we have a lot of posts around just general questions to ask, a circle keeper or a medicine keeper. If you're thinking about partaking in ceremony, we have some information around just different things about ayahuasca or about the neuroplasticity of the brain. Like, it's just a good hub for you to go to kind of start to explore some things if you're like, this sounds interesting, but I need a little more information. um, Instagram, our website, all of them are good avenues. I like to end these by pulling a card for
Fun.
you and the audience. So I'd like your participation if you're okay with that.
Hmm. Thanks for
Okay.
asking.
Yes. So go ahead and close your eyes for me. Just take a deep breath into your body. And if you gently want to place an intention, a thought, a question into the deck, I'm going to start shuffling. And whenever you feel like the shuffle is complete, just tell me when to stop.
Complete.
Okay, you can open your eyes. You got soothe.
Mm.
Well, it's a little dark when I bring it too close.
I can see it.
Like a little, it's, if you aren't watching the video, it's like, it looks like baby hands that are intertwined with a mama hand. That's what it looks like to me. I'll read it from the book because I don't have these memorized.
Sure.
Soothe brings a message of comfort. Allow the Divine Mother to hold you tightly and close to her bosom. She sends a message of reassurance and unconditional love. You are okay. You are safe. You are loved. You may rest here, assured that you are on the right path, deeply cared for and held in love. If you are feeling that low level buzz of worry, or perhaps you're in a situation that is fully activating your internal alarm systems, know that Soothe comes in with an important message to take care of yourself, to reconnect with your soul's purpose, and release into the arms of the Divine Mother. Soothe your body with self-massage. Soothe your worry by asking the Divine Mother for consolation. Love and care are needed now. Listen to the music you love. Eat a delicious, nourishing meal in noble silence. Wrap yourself in a blanket and give yourself a squeeze. You are loved.
Mm.
If that wasn't perfect for everything we talked about,
Love
can't
that.
make this shit up.
Shut up. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Is there any last message, note, anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Gosh, I think just ultimately honoring people's path, and if that finds your way to this work or whatever it is that is in front of you or that you're called to or whatever your intuitive knowing is, I encourage people to follow that, because so much of the time our journey is sort of um, sort of this domino impact of figuring out what's next, and these connections and these opportunities which lead us to the next. And part of that is the magic of our sewn tapestries of our stories. And so we love and are so honored to hold the space for folks that find their way to us. And I also just see people doing their work and figuring things out, and just big acknowledgement to those that are listening and traveling their own human journey, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, we would be so honored to be part of that journey if Costa Rica feels aligned. And it really is just an honor to be able to craft and curate and hold that space for people to come. So thank you, Adriana, for your passion to create safe spaces for people to come and be held and do this type of really vulnerable work. The world needs more of you.
Thank you. Back at you. And yeah, just such a pleasure and an honor. And thanks for having me here. It is always so fun to dialogue about this work that we love so much. So
Absolutely. Yes. So I will put all of the links in the show notes for Wise Warrior, the website, the application, the Instagram. If you thought that this episode was helpful, please share this with a friend who may also be interested in plant medicine. Give a follow, give a like, help other people just become aware of this podcast and this information that can help them on their journeys as well. So until next time, thank you, Adriana.
Thank you.
Remember that the holiday promo is good through all of December for $200 off my Awakening private coaching program. All of the information is in the show notes.